Hey guys, from the Thoughtful Gardener. Well, I wanted to invite you into my library because this is where I spend a good majority of the winter here in Pennsylvania reading. Certainly first thing in the morning, this is what I love to do with a trusty cup of coffee or tea this time of morning. So I wanted to show you some of the books that I have brought into my library this year. I love printed books. I don't like to read on screens because I have to do that for work every day. So I really love printed books. I also find that source is becoming challenging to find. So if something's really important to you, I would definitely recommend getting it in print so that you have it available to you in case we have issues with power or what have you, and there are things that you might want to know or might want to read about. So these are some of the books that I have read and are reading this season that I think would be a great gift for you or any gardener and definitely worth shelf on your library. So let's get started. The first one, actually, I'm super excited about because I want to do this with my favorite little gardener, my niece. This is the Harry Potter Herbology Magic Book. There are all kinds of things in this book if you are interested in doing projects with your friends and family. And all of us have read the Harry Potter series, so this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about the terrarium in here that shows with carnivorous plants. I think it'll be something fun for her to do to potentially take to school. I met this author, Jim Charlier, recently on a garden tour, and he told me about his book that he created a Harry Potter garden for his children. What a fun idea, too, to just create a themed garden. But these are things that you could potentially do with a Harry Potter fan or someone in your life that you like to do garden projects this time of year. Another one that I've really enjoyed this year is from the Xerces Society. This is Gardening for Butterflies. There's some extremely helpful things in here, especially when it comes to like height of plants and so forth, that I think might be extremely helpful for you. Because if you're developing a pollinator garden this year, one of the challenges might be that you may be in a homeowners association as I am, and so height does play a role into the design. I found that extremely helpful. But I am always looking to read more and better information about pollinators. This one I found to be extremely helpful, and I think it would be worthwhile of shelf space in your library. One of my favorite authors and a friend of mine is Jessica Walliser. I often talk about her Plant Partners book, which I think if you're a vegetable gardener is a must-have. It's something I have as a reference that I use every season when I'm planning out my vegetable garden. But this one is called Attracting Beneficial Bugs to Your Garden. And we gave this away as a Master Gardener present at a talk that I gave. And the person who won it gave it back to me because they know that I love Jessica Walliser, which I thought was really sweet. Thank you very much to that thoughtful gardener. But this is not only a stunningly beautiful book, but it's extremely practical. And we're going to be doing a YouTube video on pests that are in the garden. And some of the information that we will be including will be from this book. So I encourage you to buy it because, again, I think source is really important. And when you have a challenge, it's nice to be able to pull it off the shelf. Years ago, when I used to work in industry, I used to travel because I had clients as well as reps that worked for me overseas. And one of the places I spent a lot of time is France. That what I would typically do is work for 2 weeks, and during the weekends I would go somewhere. In this particular case, I went out to Giverny, which is about an hour outside of Paris, and I got to see Monet's garden. I was incredibly impressed with this incredibly stunning, beautiful garden. If you love Monet's art, you're going to love his garden. But what is really interesting is this American was one who talked her way into actually going back to Giverny. After World War II, this garden was severely damaged, and she worked with locals as well as other gardeners to restore the garden to the way that it is today and how it probably appeared in the past. But what is fun is there's all these garden plans in there of Giverny, and so if you're inspired by Monet's paintings, you'd be inspired to have this book on your shelf. And I myself am going to be using some of these techniques in my own garden this year as we lay out a very formal vegetable/pollinator garden as we expand into further sections of my garden. So really excited about that one. It's one that I love to refer to. It just makes me happy. I have found these books to be extremely helpful. This is from a series from Indigenous Landscapes. Now, they only do 2 printings a year. So this is something you need to really pay attention to. Follow them on Facebook and sign up for these books when you can get them. First of all, they're extremely reasonably priced, and they put out some really fabulous information. The first one in this series is a native plant propagation guide. You guys all know that I'm actively looking for a farm right now, and so looking to propagate native plants. I have growers that I work with that will be doing starts for me, but I'm interested in growing more plants because even our government is realizing the value of these to have for restoration projects. I'm also interested in learning this season about meadowscaping. Now, I haven't actually done a meadow myself, but I have a client who desperately wants one, and we are learning together on the best ways to do that. And you always have to be learning as a gardener. So as more and more people are looking to replace their lawns, meadows are certainly an option. And we got super inspired by a butterfly that's here in Pennsylvania called a regal fritillary that survives in a specific type of meadow in a military live fire base. You can see the video here if you would like to learn more about the regals. We're actually, for this particular client, going to be building the exact plants that are in that meadow so that she can attract those butterflies right over the mountain. So it's a really cool project that I'm working on for next year, but it's daunting because I've never done it before, so we are learning. The other thing that I have gotten requests for working with a client right now, and I'll be doing this in my own backyard, is native plant agriculture. Did you know that you can eat a lot of these native plants? The answer is yes. There are certain stages, however, of when you eat them because some of them can actually be very poisonous if you eat them too early, and some of them can be poisonous if you eat them too late. So extremely important that you read, you understand, and you consult experts before you just start popping these things in your mouth. We certainly do not want you to eat things that might hurt you. So please just be very cautious when doing this, but this could be another great addition to your library. I've also this season let people know about a really interesting collaboration that Penn State is doing with several conservancies called the Woods in Your Backyard. Now, you know I have a tiny forest in my own backyard, and so I am trying to understand how to do the best thing I can to try to maintain it. Here in central Pennsylvania, the county I live in is the fastest growing county in the state, and so a lot of the woods in surrounding areas are being completely obliterated, which puts pressure on my tiny forest every time it rains because my creek overflows the banks. So I am working to learn as much as I can about how I can be a good steward of my land. Since the majority of the land in the United States is privately owned, I encourage you to think about joining this series. Now, I got a lot of complaints because I didn't list the price. Look, Penn State's sign-up system is kind of archaic. It forces you to put all the information in before they actually tell you about it. But the series actually is pretty great. But you got this 108-page book, and I've already started to read it. And guess what? The person who does the forwarding here, our favorite, Doug Tallamy, and he writes some really beautiful things about why you want to be a good steward of your land. So I encourage you, if you're a homeowner and you have a larger property, as I do, you have some woods, or you are someone who is trying to be a good steward of your property, that you think about joining this series. And this book came free with the series, so it's $50. It's a it's a once a week series for the next few months, and you can get this great book, which I've already started to read and I absolutely love. I also had an opportunity this year to go to Old Salem, North Carolina. Many of you know North Carolina is my home. But we didn't know that there is actually a town in North Carolina that was the pre-Salem. Did you know that? So it's called Bethaba. I actually got to go there as well. And when I went there, they had a display on this very interesting woman's work that called Elizabeth Blackwell. And Elizabeth Blackwell had got into a circumstance where her family was in financial dire straits. She actually categorized all of the flowers in the physics garden that is in Chelsea, England. I'm very excited to go back and have an opportunity to see this garden because what she did was categorize all of the plants and all of their uses. This is one of the first sources available of how plants can be used to heal people. Think about in the 1700s, you couldn't go to a pharmacy. You would have gone to an apothecary, and the apothecary would have created something that could have sustained you. So women, especially, who were not at that time allowed to be college educated, this is one of the things they excelled in, is learning how to create chests full of things that would be helpful to their family. Now, should we ever have another pandemic, one of the things that has become very apparent is that things can quickly become not available. And one of the interesting things I read is one of the ingredients of something called Tamiflu. So if you're interested in learning more, this is an incredibly large volume of plants. It's not done alphabetically, it's done by season, which actually is pretty interesting. She drew them and had a subscription as they were available, and then these were then gathered up and put into a book. So this was one of the first recordings, botanically correct, of plants that would have been available, and then she put in bullet point form, much like an early PowerPoint, what you would do with the plant, which I think is incredibly interesting. So I think you might like this if you're into that. I would encourage you to look for this book and learn about this remarkable lady and what she did. Several books that I've actually gotten to review this year that I think are really stunning. This one is by Jenny Bloom. Actually, she's the original Thoughtful Gardener. Hi, Jenny, if you're watching this. I am a huge fan of what you have done. But this is an extremely stunningly beautiful book with all different types of plants, artwork, and talking about all the things that make gardens beautiful. I'll be reading this one for a long time because it is that meaty, but it's really a beautiful book. It would be great for any gardener, and I think you might really appreciate that one. Another one that I read this year that I thought was excellent is called New Naturalism. This is by Kelly Norris. And this is really talking about the types of plants that you can put in what's becoming the new normal, which is getting rid of lawns, putting in functional gardens, spaces that people actually want to use that are chemical free, that allow your plants, pollinators, and yourselves to thrive. So this is a really stunningly beautiful as well as extremely practical if you're looking at converting parts of your garden into a more natural setting using native plants. One that if you are definitely already in this space that I use routinely is Thomas Rainier's and Claudia West's Planting in a Post-Wild World. I learned about Claudia West after attending a session at Penn State. There is a arboretum at Penn State in Happy Valley that is full of native plants that Claudia was responsible for actually designing. A lot of the research that I quote is from Professor Patch at Penn State, and then he worked with Claudia to actually gather them into communities and plant them. And so I think this is an extremely valuable book if you're looking to convert parts of your gardens or your properties into native wild plantings. This is exceptionally helpful and really beautiful. Another one that I got to review this year was The Cottage Garden by Klaus Dalby. I think probably the thing I get asked to do the most when I'm working with clients is to do a cottage garden. And cottage gardens, I think, can be exceptionally high maintenance, but you can certainly do them with native plants. This is definitely combinations of herbs, flowers, vegetables, really stunningly beautiful plants that I use in gardens, including my own right now, like borage, and then also plants that I love to use decoratively, like tulips. And he features his chickens. Super cute to have chickens in the garden. I have lots of friends who have chickens. I don't, but certainly it gives you an idea of what cottage gardens can look like, and I think it would be very inspirational, especially on a cold day like today, where you can look at that and maybe be inspired to create a cottage garden of your own. I also got to review Jackie Bennett's The Writer's Garden. This is really interesting because I love to read about garden writers. and this is talking about the different writers' gardens. So if you have read books and loved writers like Ernest Hemingway, you can actually visit their gardens through this book, which is really like being able to travel while you're sitting in your chair. So maybe it will give you some inspirational gardens to go actually visit, because these still exist. So I really enjoyed reading this because it's inspirational, both from the writer's standpoint and also getting a glimpse into their garden. So I hope that these are some that might be interesting to you to put onto your garden shelves this year. I love to read, and I would be really interested to hear from your perspective. What are you reading? What's on your shelf that you're reading this year? And anything that has inspired you, I would love to include and read and certainly give my feedback on too. So if you've read a great book this year related to gardening or not, I would love to hear about it. If you could do me a favor, if you like this post, if you could share it, or if you could put a comment. The reason is the algorithm loves when you guys are engaging with content. I appreciate that you watch and put a thumbs up. That's awesome. I love it when you subscribe. Thank you so much. But if you can leave a comment, it actually makes it so that more people can see this content. So if you love to read, if you love gardens, I would really appreciate it if you could just leave a comment below. Tell me what you liked, maybe what you're reading. That would be fantastic. Happy holidays to all of you, and garden thoughtfully. Take care.